I don't usually own
third-party lenses,
but this
Sigma 18 to 50.
is not bad.
What's up everyone, Pete Coco here, and today I'm reviewing the brand new Sigma 18 to 50 2.8 DCDN contemporary lens. Now make sure you stay tuned because later on I'm going to show you some of the photos I took with this lens while I had it on loan from Sigma. Thank you to F-Stoppers and Sigma Corporation for sending me the 18 to 50 to check out, and if you're interested in the print version of this review, it is linked in the description right down below. Now I spent a few weeks testing this lens and I have a lot to say, so let's get right to it. This is the TARDIS of lenses. Now when I first took this lens out of the box, I was really surprised by how incredibly small it is. In fact, this is the smallest zoom lens with a straight 2.8 aperture that I think I've ever seen. And if you look at it next to my Fuji 16 to 55 2.8, you could see a huge difference in size. Now to be honest, when I first took it out of the box, I was quite unenthused by how tiny it was because I expected something much beefier to show up on my doorstep. But this lens is like Doctor Who's TARDIS because it's much bigger on the inside, and I will explain more about that as we go. First thing I decided to do was try the lens out on a corporate shoot, which is the worst idea and something I strongly do not recommend. But I had all my other gear with me and I figured that I'd throw it on my X-T4 and take a few shots, and if I didn't like what I saw, I would just drop it back in my bag. Also, I used it only for a bunch of natural light office candidates at this software company that I was photographing, so it was a very low pressure situation to give it a try, and it wasn't like I was shooting someone's wedding or something. Anyway, after a few minutes of shooting, it dawned on me that I was shooting 2.8 with this little tiny lens that looks the size of a kit lens. And I was like, whoa, this is awesome, because I was able to get some great results without flash under nasty fluorescent lighting in this office. Now, unfortunately, I can't show you those particular images because of my agreement with the company, so you'll have to take my word for it there. But don't worry, I did a lot more shooting with it after that. I'm going to show you some of those images. Anyway, it didn't take me long to realize that I had something special in my hands with this lens, especially after I tested it on my toughest, most difficult, most trying subjects. That's right, my kids. So when mom was out getting her hair zhuzhed, I took my two little urchins to the local park and I subjected them to hundreds and hundreds of photos. And again, I was very impressed with the handling, the speed, and the image quality of the 18 to 50. And I can't stress how fun it is to use this lens paired with a camera like the X-T4 because it just fits together really nicely. Check out some of these pictures I got at the park and at a local nature preserve. And of course, I used a bunch of different Fujifilm simulations to see how it looked. Now this is the first high-end zoom lens from a third party that I've used on my X-T4, and I gotta say I'm very impressed with the colors and the contrast, and even the bokeh is pretty darn good for a shallow zoom. One thing that really surprised me is how much I like using Velvia for some of my portraits, which is something I don't often do because I usually find the skin tones to be way oversaturated. But in this case, I really love how my mini-me's look surrounded by all of the rich fall colors, which are super punchy and saturated. Check out this one in particular because I shot it at sunset with the sun directly hitting into them, and it almost looks like I used off-camera flash here, but I didn't. They were taken in natural light. And I think it looks pretty cool. Now, keep in mind that as I talk about image quality, I'm definitely not one of those photographers who photograph charts and zoom into like 1,000,000,000% and look at each individual pixel. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate those reviewers when they're needed, but that's not me. So I'm looking at image quality from a real world and practical perspective, and I tested the lens at a variety of apertures, a variety of lighting situations, and with and without flash, and at different zoom ranges to be as thorough as possible. Now, after all that, I took some photos of my bandmates at my studio, and I did some screen recording of that so you could see sort of how the autofocus was performing in a pretty low light situation. On some of these edits, I used enhancer film simulations in addition to the Fujifilm sims to create the edits you're looking at. And once again, I was really pleased with the lens, and I enjoyed using it not only out in the field, but also in the studio. So to sum up the image quality, I really was impressed with this lens. The sharpness, the contrast, the colors. There's really nothing to complain about there in my book. And check out just how nicely it fits on the X-T4. So if you're using a Fuji X-T4, or if you're getting an X-T5, or you have any of the small bodies like this, or if you're using a smaller Sony, this lens really pairs well, and you're getting a super fast, high quality lens. All right, let's talk about build quality and handling. Now, although the 18-55, as I've been saying, is quite compact, it feels pretty robust and solid. The lens is not heavy, and it doesn't have a metallic feeling, but it has more of sort of a rubberized feeling throughout. It's also weather sealed, which is an awesome feature that tells you that Sigma designed it to take some punishment from the elements, and it has a metal lens mount. The hood even has that sort of rubberized feeling, and the whole thing feels really good paired on my X-T4. Now, I do, however, have a few gripes with this lens. First, it does not have an aperture ring, but as I mentioned, this lens is designed for APS-C sensor-sized cameras and not exclusively for Fujifilm. So obviously that makes sense, and I'm not criticizing it for that reason, but it's just something I want to point out to my fellow Fuji users. But my real gripe with the lens is that the manual focusing ring is just too narrow, which makes it hard to find. Every time I manually focus with the lens, I feel like I need to really find where that ring is and make sure my fingers are on it and not like touching the barrel so that I can smoothly turn it. And I don't have huge hands, so if I'm having that issue, some others probably will as well. I know it's not a big deal, but it's definitely something just to keep in mind. Let's talk about autofocus. The autofocus in the Sigma 18-50 is fast and quiet, making the lens suitable for stills as well as video work. I was very impressed with the focusing overall, and I found that the focus was comparable to my 16-55 Fuji lens, which is much bigger and heavier and much more expensive. Now, let me offer one caveat here, and that's the X-T4. My biggest complaint with the X-T4, like most people, is that the autofocus is hit or miss. And because of that, I expected to see a bit of a decline in the focusing accuracy and speed with a third-party lens. But again, I was impressed by how it performed, and I did find it to be very comparable to my Fuji lenses. Now, I like to shoot in continuous mode with face tracking, so most of the photos I captured for this review were used in that setting. The last Sigma lens I used was probably in 1998, and although I've known they make great lenses, and so many of my photographer friends always tell me how great they are, this was the first Sigma lens that I've used on a modern mirrorless camera, and I remain very impressed. And that's why I dubbed this lens the TARDIS of lenses. It's much bigger on the inside.
Don't believe it. It's bigger inside than out.
Yes.
It turns out to have much more inside than one would expect, including super fast 2.8 constant aperture, fast and accurate and quiet autofocus, excellent sharpness, and handling that makes me not miss my huge 2.8 lenses at all. In fact, I'm sorry I have to send it back after this review is done because it's been on my camera since I got it without fail. Well, that's all I have for you today. As always, thank you everyone for watching. I really do appreciate it very, very much. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Go ahead and gently press that like button as there is no need to smash it. And here's wishing you a great day. Go out and take some awesome pictures, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.